heard from anybody back up at Bellingham about the game? Maybe a little good-natured ribbing or anything like that so far?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of interest in it, and certainly a number of fans will be coming down. And so, yeah, good-natured ribbing, and I know it's an exciting game for them, certainly.
Is it going to be a little weird just looking out to all those guys? I mean, you recruited those guys, you know in and out.
Yeah, it will. I haven't really thought about it too much, but I think it'll be very different, especially once we get out on the floor. I did have an opportunity to go back Bellingham last week. We had a ring presentation ceremony, so I got a chance to see the guys, and that was good. I think as much as the players will probably be with the coaches, especially Coach Dominguez, Coach Visser, guys I've coached with for a long, long time. That's probably the biggest thing as far as just the oddity in that sense.
Did you get your ring?
The rings actually didn't show. The boxes were there, but I don't know, the NCAA was still approving them or something, but we'll get them eventually.
Brad, you were there for so long, a lot of memories, obviously, the title last year. What stands out over your time in Bellingham that especially you were important to you?
Most coaches would probably say this, I think, when you coach for a long time, and particularly in one spot, but it certainly is the players, the association with the players and the interaction. And I felt like I was treated, very, very well by the community, and we were fortunate to be able to develop something that hadn't happened prior and sustain that over a period of time. And so that's the thing that I feel good about, is that I think basketball at Western Washington has become a community event and something that people take a lot of ownership in, take a lot of pride in, and we just tried to develop a culture of excellence, and one in which the players could grow on and off the floor. And so those are the types of things that I feel probably the most tied to and reflect on the most.
And you probably know this better than anyone, but what type of a challenge will that Western team give Washington on Wednesday?
Well, I think one of them is that the psychological advantage is certainly in their favor. We did this, we've done it a couple times, we meaning Western. And I know when we came in here before, when Western came in here before, it was a mindset that we're going to come out and play well. And particularly given the number of players that have come back off the national championship team, their goals for this year, I do not think that it will be a situation where they're intimidated or going to be holding back. One of the things we'll remind our players of, certainly, is last year when SPU went down and beat Arizona. I think they're very aware of that. But nevertheless, there's that tendency to kind of minimize it. They've had a scrimmage already. They played a closed-door scrimmage against Eastern, so they've been out on the floor. This will be our first opportunity in public, and there's a lot of factors there. So I think the mindset will need to be focused, and there's some specific things we'll need to do to play well.
You know that team inside and out. I mean, as being an exhibition game where it doesn't show up in the standings, is this more something that you're going to go out and do what you guys do? Or are you going to go after their weaknesses and exploit the weaknesses that you know so well?
We're going to treat it just like a regular game in terms of our scout and preparation. I don't know that Coach Romar probably knows any other way, to be honest with you. I mean, we want to be fully prepared, and obviously we're implementing some new stuff offensively. No, I think that we'll do everything we can to come out and take advantage of whatever knowledge that we have against our opponent.
And if you had to give a quick scouting report on Western, it would be what?
I would say number one, they're a pretty free-flowing team. They've got a lot of confident players, and I think this is fairly accurate. Most people would recognize that usually at the high levels, especially in Division II, you have teams that have a lot of shooters. Maybe not quite as athletic, but not that far off. And I would say that the top teams normally have 4, sometimes 5 guys that can hit threes, and so they're very good in transition. They're going to be free flowing. They're not going to be shy in terms of how they shoot the ball. And they play together very well as a team. At least they have shown that prior to this time. So my guess it would be a well-balanced team that is going to be relatively confident.
Do you have to think through Brad saying we and they and?
Yeah, obviously I've already done that. But you know what, as you say that, I need to say to you that I, just on a personal note, you know, having been here now for a couple of months, feeling very well immersed, and this particular game maybe makes that just a little bit more difficult, but I feel as though, you know, been able to make that transition and very excited about what's happening right now.
Brad, before you went to Europe, you talked about your strengths, and one of them was as a scout and evaluating what have you. Was it a little surreal having to scout your own team?
Yeah, it was, I guess, although at the same time it meant that I didn't probably have to study as hard.
Where do you think your guys are with the comfort level with the new offense?
Well, that's a good question. I really like where we are so far. Obviously, the practices prior to going to Europe were significant, and having the opportunity to play against good competition gave us a head start before we ever began practice. You know, and in that type of offense, which I've been familiar with and ran for a long time as a head coach, there's the learning process to get the patterns down, the options, that type of thing. But then there's another step that comes into play when it starts to become automatic, and guys learn how to read the defense and counter and take advantage of that. And a couple things happen. One is a comfort zone where it becomes more fluid. The other one is that they begin to learn how to utilize the offense to take advantage of a hot hand or a mismatch or whatever that might be. And I think we're getting to that point now where we're starting to see some of those things. So, you know, at this point in the season, not having played a game, I felt like the players they're totally bought in, they're taking ownership, and their execution level is pretty good.
And so do you feel like the ARCA understanding with this group versus you teaching other groups in the past is what they're picking up faster, slower, as fast?
I don't know that it's rocket science necessarily, and I don't know that I would necessarily compare, but I would say that they've picked it up well. And my impression as a new guy coming in, just generally speaking, about this team is that they are very coachable, and they listen well, they pay attention, and you know, they've tried to do what we've asked them to do. And again, I think that's a real tribute to Coach Romar and his staff for the collection of players that we have. But I also think that these guys, they have a good mindset, and you know, they're pretty serious business and in terms of their practice habits and learning curve.
I have a follow-up to that, Brad. Is coaching basketball regardless of the level? And do you approach these players at this level the same way you approached the players at the Division II level?
My answer to that question would be yes, I think so. And certainly there's differences possibly that show up in other ways, just the sheer talent level, or a great player that would be obviously better than a player at the Division II level. But to me, the principles of teaching are the same. I remember a number of years ago, just to answer your question, you guys would remember Greg Foster that played at UCLA, played at UTEP, played in the pros forever, and came to speak at my camp one time. And we were just talking, and he told the kids this story. He said he had been traded to the Bulls, and he played for a number of different teams, and he was shocked when he went to the first practice, because he said it was like being in 8th grade all over again, working on footwork and getting your lead hand up and all the little tiny things that every coach works on. And he asked me, he said, what do you think was the best at that? And I said, well, Michael Jordan, you know, obvious answer. He goes, yeah, absolutely. And that's probably one of the things that I believe stays the same, Bobby, not just in terms of whatever level. The basics, the fundamental aspects of the game are the same, and then it's a question of paying attention to that detail, making that part of what you do, so that when you get into competition, it becomes automatic and you're not thinking about it. And that sort of piggybacks on to your question, is that I think these guys have done a good job of that.
Having been on the other side of it until this year, how important are these exhibition games for the lower level program when they get the opportunity to step up and play a Division I program?
It's a great opportunity. Number one, it's a lot of fun, you know. But to play against a Pac-12 team, and they're going to go on and play against Duke, is all positive, because when you get back to playing against the competition that you've played against, you have something to sell as a coach, certainly, and especially if they do well. I'm not sure the score is that big of a deal. It's probably more how they handle the situation. And if they handle it well, they play with poise and play with confidence, you can build off of that when you start playing against Division II competition.
And then how much easier did it make things for you as a coach when Lorenzo decided he was going to start having, it seemed like a rotation of Western, SPU, and Central that they bring in?
It was great. Part of it was for our fans and people around our program. When I was at Western, that was really great to especially get Seattle people to come and watch and be a part of that. As a coach at Western, I had a hard time getting Division I games because a lot of schools didn't really want to play us, and I don't say that in an arrogant fashion. It was just kind of an image that was created. I don't know if it was correct necessarily, but so that was really great to know that at least we'd get a game, every 4 years, and it was always a really a neat deal.
Last time we talked to you, you hadn't really had a chance to work with the guys, or very, very little. Maybe some guys that jumped out that you didn't know about. Anything surprise you at all?
I was pretty familiar with the players, just generally speaking. I will say this, I've been really excited to see how a couple of the guys have done. I feel that Abdul has really done well here in these first few weeks, and just as an outsider looking in and now being able to coach him on a daily basis, I just feel like his confidence level and his leadership, just he's playing with a lot of focus, but yet at the same time being relaxed. That's been really neat. I've really enjoyed watching that. The other player maybe that sticks out to me a little bit right now, and he's got a long ways to go yet, but he's got a real high ceiling, is Jernard. And that's been very, very fun to see him, again, become more aggressive in practice and begin to assert himself. And so there's just a couple of examples of guys that, to me, have sort of really done a great job in the first few weeks.
Brad, when you talk about Abdul specifically and changing from being a point guard in their motion to now being the one guard front for the high post offense, what are the 2 or 3 maybe biggest keys for him in terms of kind of mastering the offense and what you guys need to get out of him?
Well, to me, and again, I'm speaking from a relatively inexperienced standpoint of being here for a long time, but I feel like this particular offense suits him extremely well because in the 3-out-2 in motion, a lot of it's one-on-one breakdown and not necessarily coming off of screens, single or double screens. He does that extremely well, and he's not a great blow-by guy, but if he gets his head and shoulders by you, he's big and he can get into the key. But being able to use that high screen off the guard cut to step back, to rub his man off, he's getting single screens, he's getting double screens. I think that's very, very good for him because he can catch and shoot. And post-ups, there's times where we can get him on the block with the ball against certain matchups. And so, and he's cerebral, and he's done a really good job of kind of figuring out how to use it. So where in the previous offense, that may not have happened quite as much. And this is probably a much more vertical offense, which suits him well in utilizing some of the play sets that we have, on-ball screens, that type of thing.
So will people see him as much as being a scorer as a distributor in this type of offense?
I hope so. I'm not sure what coach is thinking, but so far he's done a great job of blending those two together.
All right, anything else for Coach?
Yeah, just since you've been here, recruiting, I'm guessing, is a little bit different. Can you tell me what it's like to be on the road for representing Washington as opposed to Western? Is the per diem higher?
Just a little bit. Yeah, it's just, obviously it's different. I mean, I would get in my car and drive to Tacoma or Portland, and here we get on a plane and fly wherever, so that's quite a bit different. you know, the intensity level probably of going after the top level athletes and the interest and the competition and all the things that go with that. I mean, at Division II you have that to some extent, but there's a lot more factors involved in that process of decision making that I think differentiate between the two levels.
Can you expand a little bit on the competitiveness? Because it sounds like, I'm guessing it's a lot more competitive. And it brings that out in you too.
Yeah, not having been through a full cycle, again, that's a little bit difficult to answer specifically, but there's, again, I think there's just a lot of other factors that come into play in the decision-making process, whether it be parents or others, or, you know, aspirations, other influences, all that type of thing.
Thanks, Coach.
Great.
Thank you.